You know what's absolutely terrifying to most people? It's not death, failure, or even rejection. It's the moment when someone they've been controlling suddenly becomes unreachable. Picture this. You're in a room full of people who usually hang on your every word, react to your every move, jump when you say jump. And then one day, one person in that room just stops. They don't argue back. They don't explain themselves. They don't even seem bothered. They simply withdraw. And suddenly, everyone else in the room starts panicking. This isn't some mystical power reserved for the enlightened few. This is psychology. Raw, proven, devastatingly effective psychology. And today, you're going to learn exactly how to weaponize your own absence. If you've ever felt drained by people who seem to suck the life out of you, if you're tired of being everyone's emotional dumping ground, if you're ready to reclaim your power, then hit that subscribe button right now. Because what I'm about to show you will fundamentally change how people treat you. Let me start with a question that might make you uncomfortable. How many times this week have you said yes when every fiber of your being wanted to scream no? How many times have you responded to a text immediately, even though you were exhausted? How many times have you explained yourself to someone who didn't deserve even a moment of your attention? Here's the brutal truth. Every single time you do this, you're training people to treat you like a doormat. You're literally programming them to see you as someone with no boundaries, no self-respect, and no real value. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in psychology, discovered something that will blow your mind. He found that what we resist in others is actually a mirror of what we haven't accepted in ourselves. But here's the twist nobody talks about. When you become psychologically unavailable, you force others to confront their own demons. And most people would rather die than do that. Think about the last time someone got really angry at you for not responding immediately to their drama. Were they actually angry at you? Or were they angry because your silence forced them to sit alone with their own thoughts, their own insecurities, their own emptiness? You see, when you're always available, always responding, always explaining yourself, you become what Jung called a container for other people's psychological projections. You become their emotional garbage disposal. And the sickest part, you probably think this makes you a good person. But let me tell you something that might shatter your worldview. Being constantly available isn't kindness. It's cowardice. It's the fear of being disliked dressed up as virtue. And it's slowly killing your soul. Every time you drop everything to help someone who wouldn't do the same for you, every time you stay up all night worrying about someone else's problems while neglecting your own, every time you sacrifice your peace to maintain someone else's comfort, you're committing a slow form of psychological suicide. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are instead of who everyone else needs you to be. And the first step in this process is learning to become strategically unavailable. Now, I know what you're thinking. But if I stop being available, people will leave me. Good, let them leave. Do you really want people in your life who only value you for what you can do for them? Do you want relationships that exist only because you're convenient? Here's something that will change your perspective forever. The people who get angry when you set boundaries are the exact people you need to protect yourself from. They're not upset because they care about you. They're upset because they can no longer control you. When you start becoming unavailable, something magical happens. First, you'll notice which relationships were actually built on mutual respect and which ones were built on your willingness to be used. The real ones will understand and support your growth. The fake ones will try to guilt-trip you back into servitude. This is where Jung's concept of the shadow becomes crucial. Your shadow isn't just the dark parts of yourself you don't want to acknowledge. It's also the parts of yourself you've given away to keep others comfortable. Your authentic opinions, your real needs, your genuine feelings all sacrificed on the altar of being nice. But when you withdraw, when you stop feeding the machine of other people's emotional neediness, your shadow starts to integrate. You start remembering who you were before you became everyone's emotional support animal. You start reclaiming the pieces of yourself you scattered trying to keep everyone else happy. And this terrifies people. Because now they can't predict you. They can't manipulate you. They can't use your emotions against you. You've become what Jung called individuated, whole unto yourself. Let me share something that might disturb you. Most of your relationships are based on your willingness to be emotionally manipulated. Think about it. How many people in your life actually add value to your existence versus how many people drain your energy and expect you to be grateful for the privilege? The ones who drain you have trained you to believe that your worth comes from your availability. They've convinced you that love means never saying no, never having boundaries, never prioritizing your own needs. This isn't love. This is emotional abuse disguised as affection. Jung understood something that most therapists today refuse to acknowledge. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is become completely unavailable to certain people. Not because you hate them, but because you love yourself enough to protect your energy. Your psychic energy, that's what Jung called your mental and emotional life force, is finite. Every interaction drains some of it. Every emotional reaction depletes your reserves. Every time you engage with someone's drama, you're investing precious energy that you'll never get back. Successful people understand this instinctively. They're selective about who gets access to their energy. They don't explain themselves to everyone. They don't justify their choices to people who haven't earned the right to question them. They understand that attention is the most valuable currency in the world, and they don't give it away cheaply. But you've been giving away your attention like free samples at a grocery store. You've been so afraid of being called selfish that you've become selfless to the point of self-destruction. Here's what nobody tells you about boundaries. They're not walls to keep people out. They're filters to let the right people in. When you become unavailable to everyone, you become incredibly valuable to the people who actually matter. Think about the most powerful people you know. Are they available 24/7? Do they respond to every text immediately? Do they explain themselves to every person who questions their choices? Of course not. They understand that scarcity creates value and availability destroys it. Now let me teach you the psychology behind withdrawal. When you suddenly become unavailable to someone who's used to controlling you, their brain goes into panic mode. They start questioning everything. What did I do wrong? Why aren't they responding? Do they not like me anymore? This panic isn't love. It's addiction withdrawal. They're addicted to the hit of power they get from manipulating your emotions, and you've just cut off their supply. They'll try everything to get you back under their control. They'll guilt trip you. You've changed, you're not the same person. They'll try to provoke you. You think you're better than everyone now. They'll even try reverse psychology. Fine, I don't need you anyway. All of these are attempts to get you to react, to explain yourself, to come back into the dynamic where they have power over your emotions. But here's the secret. The moment you explain yourself to someone who's trying to manipulate you, you've already lost. Silence is the most powerful response to manipulation because it forces the manipulator to confront their own behavior without your emotional reaction to distract them. When you don't react, they have to face the uncomfortable truth that their behavior is the problem, not your response to it. Jung discovered that what we call personality is often just a collection of reactions to other people's expectations. We become who we think others want us to be, and we lose touch with who we actually are. Withdrawal gives you the space to rediscover your authentic self, but this process isn't comfortable. When you stop being reactive, you might feel like you're losing your identity. That's because your identity was built on being needed, being helpful, being available. Without those external validations, who are you? This is the dark night of the soul that every individuated person must face. You have to sit with the discomfort of not knowing who you are without your role as everyone's emotional savior. You have to learn to find value in yourself that isn't dependent on how useful you are to others. And here's where it gets really interesting. When you stop reacting to people's emotional manipulation, you start seeing patterns you never noticed before. You realize that person who always calls you when they're in crisis, but never when they have good news to share. You notice that friend who only wants to hang out when they need something from you. These patterns were always there, but your constant reactivity blinded you to them. Withdrawal gives you the clarity to see your relationships for what they really are, not what you hoped they could be. The most powerful realization you'll have during this process is that most people don't actually know you at all. They know the version of you that you've performed for their comfort. They know the you that says yes to everything, explains everything, tolerates everything. When you stop performing this version of yourself, they'll claim you've changed. But you haven't changed. You've just stopped pretending to be someone you're not. And their discomfort with your authenticity reveals how invested they were in your inauthenticity. Jung called this process shadow integration, accepting and reclaiming the parts of yourself you've hidden or suppressed. This includes your right to say no, your right to prioritize your own needs, your right to be unavailable when you need to protect your energy. But here's the paradox. The more unavailable you become to people who don't deserve your energy, the more attractive you become to people who do. Quality people are drawn to others who have boundaries, who value themselves, who don't need external validation to feel worthy. When you're no longer desperate for approval, you start attracting people who appreciate your authentic self rather than your performed self. These relationships are deeper, more meaningful, and actually reciprocal. The key is learning to distinguish between healthy solitude and isolation born from fear. Healthy solitude is choosing to be alone to recharge, reflect, and reconnect with yourself. Fear-based isolation is avoiding people because you're afraid of being hurt or rejected. Jung emphasized that individuation isn't about becoming antisocial. It's about becoming selective. It's about choosing your connections consciously rather than accepting whatever relationships fall into your lap. This selectivity will feel foreign at first. You've been conditioned to believe that turning down invitations, not responding immediately to messages, or declining requests for help makes you a bad person. But these are the exact behaviors that will transform your life. When you stop being available for emotional dumping, people will start treating their own emotions as their responsibility. When you stop solving everyone's problems, they'll start developing their own problem-solving skills. When you stop being the go-to person for validation, people will start finding validation within themselves. In other words, your unavailability doesn't just benefit you, it forces others to grow as well. You're not being cruel by setting boundaries. You're being compassionate enough to stop enabling their emotional immaturity. But let's be honest about the cost. Some people will leave your life when you start valuing yourself. Some relationships will end when you stop being convenient. Some people will call you selfish when you start practicing self-care. These losses might feel devastating at first. You might question whether you're doing the right thing. You might be tempted to go back to your old patterns just to keep people comfortable. Don't. This discomfort is temporary, but the freedom you'll gain is permanent. Every person who leaves your life because you started respecting yourself was never truly in your life anyway. They were just using you as a resource. The people who stay, who support your growth, who respect your boundaries, these are your real relationships. These are the connections worth nurturing and maintaining. Here's something Jung discovered that will revolutionize how you think about relationships. True intimacy is only possible between two people who are complete within themselves. When you're desperate for others to fill your emotional voids, you create codependent relationships that ultimately satisfy no one. But when you're whole unto yourself, When you're not looking for others to complete you or validate you, you can connect with people from a place of strength rather than need. These connections are more honest, more satisfying, and more sustainable. This is why becoming unavailable isn't the end of your social life. It's the beginning of your real social life. It's the difference between collecting people who use you and attracting people who choose you. The transformation isn't just external. When you stop giving your energy away indiscriminately, you start having energy for the things that actually matter to you. Your creativity returns. Your clarity improves. Your sense of purpose strengthens. You realize that all those hours you spent managing other people's emotions could have been spent developing your own interests, pursuing your own goals, building your own dreams. You've been so busy being everyone else's therapist that you forgot to live your own life. This is the ultimate goal of psychological withdrawal, not to isolate yourself from the world, but to engage with it from a position of strength rather than desperation. To choose your battles rather than fighting every war. To invest your energy wisely rather than spending it recklessly. When you master this skill, you become what Jung called individuated, fully yourself, integrated and authentic. You stop being a mirror for other people's projections and start reflecting your own inner light. People will notice this change in you. They'll comment on how different you seem, how much more confident you appear, how much more peaceful you've become. They won't understand that this transformation came from learning to say no, setting boundaries, and becoming strategically unavailable. But you'll know that your worth isn't determined by how useful you are to others. You'll know that your value isn't measured by how much drama you can tolerate. You'll know that your peace is more important than anyone else's comfort. This knowledge will set you free in ways you never imagined possible. Free from the exhausting cycle of people-pleasing. Free from the anxiety of constantly trying to manage other people's emotions. Free from the resentment of giving more than you receive. And in that freedom, you'll discover who you really are beneath all the masks you've worn to keep others comfortable. You'll find your authentic voice, your genuine interests, your real values. This is the gift of withdrawal. Not the absence of connection, but the presence of self. Not the rejection of others, but the acceptance of yourself. Not the end of relationships, but the beginning of real ones. Are you ready to stop being everyone's emotional emergency contact? Are you ready to reclaim the energy you've been giving away for free? Are you ready to discover who you are when you're not trying to be what everyone else needs? If your answer is yes, then start today. Start small. Don't respond to that text immediately. Don't explain yourself to that person who questions your choices. Don't say yes to that invitation you don't actually want to accept. Watch what happens. Notice who gets uncomfortable with your new boundaries. Pay attention to who tries to guilt you back into your old patterns. These reactions will tell you everything you need to know about the true nature of your relationships. And most importantly, notice how you feel. Notice the relief of not carrying everyone else's emotional baggage. Notice the peace that comes from protecting your energy. Notice the strength that builds when you stop giving your power away. This is your life, your energy, your choice. Stop giving it away to people who don't deserve it and start investing it in the person who does you. Comment below if you're ready to take back control of your energy and stop being everyone's emotional support system. Let me know what boundaries you're going to start setting today. And if this message resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Your transformation starts now.